Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Teri Yu. Teri is the founder of Vibely, a seed stage startup for communities to crush their goals together. Previously, she was an early growth PM at Asana, previously business development at Microsoft Yammer. In 2011, she was a YouTube creator with over 2 million views. Teri, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me, both Maggie and Brian.
Of course, we're excited to have you here today. So we'll hop right into it, Teri. How did you develop your hustle mindset growing up?
That's a very good question. So I think it might have been just seeing my mom growing up. She, came from Taiwan, moved to Arizona. She lived here actually by herself for a couple of years before my dad came over. So she was with my brother before I was born. And she's always been the kind to have this relentless persistence. No matter what was thrown at her, she was always knocking down the walls that were in front of her. So just growing up around that mentality really absorbed in myself as well. And then, going into college, there were some entrepreneurial ventures that I had then tried a bunch of stuff out and then realized that this was really the part of a business that I was most passionate about. And it kind of leads me to where I came to today.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds like your mother had a lot of influence on your mentality and just the way that you grew up. Can you talk about the kind of entrepreneurial stuff that you had worked on while you were growing up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wish it was when I was like 5 years old or 12 years old. But it's more that in college, I actually worked on something called Steam Room, which was a Netflix for costumes when Run the Runway was having its initial attraction. And the reason why I thought it was a good idea was because at USC, and you know this, Brian, like the frat culture is hot. And so there are parties basically every week, and it just seemed like a waste of money to get costumes every time. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to solve that problem. But what I realized was that it was a very operationally heavy business where you have to have inventory of costumes, then you have to ship it out, which I would actually drive to people's places to do myself. And then you would have to have them return it, store it somewhere, clean it, and then just make sure you manage your numbers correctly. And that was a lot of work for something I ended up not being that passionate about. Mm-hmm. So my major learning from that experience was next time around, work on something that is core to who you are, something you're truly just waking up every day, thinking about something that would make a huge difference in your personal life and for others around you. Mm-hmm. So that's a big motivator of why I started Vibely.
Wow, that's so awesome. I think you bring up a really good point too, with entrepreneurship. You always draw on every single experience in your life, like when you throughout your childhood, your early experiences, and all these factor into their decision making that you make for your current company, So the biggest advice here is try different things. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, exactly. And to that point, growing up, I also was very involved in some local communities. So my parents, when my dad actually came over to Arizona and stayed with my mom, they were part of something called the Taiwanese American Association. Mm-hmm. And that was their second family where my mom became the president. My dad played in the monthly band. This was a big part of how they felt supported being in a state in which they had no friends, no family. And so that was a big part of my childhood as well, where I grew up around all these people who were there for me at any point in time when I was struggling with anything. And so we are now in an age today where, communities mean something very different. There isn't really this sense of like true affiliation on the digital side. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, that kind of experience also fed into why this mission matters to me or why, we've worked on Vibely.
Wow, that's so amazing. I love how you touched on how both of your parents were so active in communities. And obviously we're going to touch on Vibely in a little bit, how that, kind of transfers to community building for you as well. I would love to know, like, did your parents have like a specific plan for you? Like, were they like tiger parents and did they have a plan for you, or were they very laid back and kind of gave you that flexibility to do what you wanted to do?
What do they say about entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
They're like, what the heck?
Oh my gosh. So my parents are the most tiger parents I'll possibly imagine. So they were the kind of parents that would assign me homework growing up when I had no homework. Like they would give me math exercises. I'm sure you guys experience this too, actually. But, I spent literally the whole day, quote unquote, doing homework. And so, I actually lost motivation at many points because it would just keep assigning me more and more if I finished it. So I would just sometimes sit there and like think about life. I think that gave me a chance to like be more creative during that time too, instead of just always executing. But that really shaped me in the sense that, I continued to like work hard after even going into college and having, there was a fun time around that point. But it was part of my DNA to kind of like keep hustling after. Mm-hmm. And then, for entrepreneurship, it's something that my parents, I think, are at the core of them, like kind of supportive, but there's a lot more, there's a lot of energy to like me working at the big company culture. Like my mom tells people that I work at, that I've worked at Microsoft, that, she sometimes has the story in her head that I work at Google, which is, and so she obviously really wants to be proud. That way. And that's a traditional way that your Asian parents will try to push you. Yeah. But as I've, accomplished more and more with the company, I think they're starting to open their eyes a bit and see that, if there definitely is something that we're onto something, and there's a lot of like difference that we can make in the world. And it's not just about, checking the boxes and the trophies and all that stuff.
I love that. I love that a lot. That's the thing with Asian parents too. It's like, they're always really skeptical at first. But until you prove that this is viable and this is possible, they'll be your number one supporter moving forward,
Yeah, that's true. They have been more supportive than I'm sure a lot of Asian parents could be. Yeah. So I am thankful for them, and like how like their ability to bring me up in this environment did allow me to pursue the American dream. Yeah. So a lot goes back to them too.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to your parents. I mean, Ozzy raised a fantastic daughter, and we're happy to have you.
Rui and Tom, if you're listening.
But yeah, I do want to switch over to Vibely, like making that transition. And, we listened to your previous podcast too last year, and the amount of growth that you made from January 2020 to March right now, that the time that we're recording this podcast, is tremendous. Can you talk a little more about your transition from working in tech to be now creating your own company and becoming CEO?
Yeah. Does everyone already know what Vibely is, or should I just
dive into it?
Yeah, dive into it. Okay. Tell the listeners what Vibely is.
Yes. Okay, great. That might provide some context as I talk through it. So at Vibely, we believe that tech should empower us, not define us. And so we started with this mission of changing the social media landscape in a way that we could build meaningful and enriching interactions between communities. Mm-hmm. Really like the experience that I just touched on, growing up in tight-knit local communities. So Vibely is a way for positive and safe communities to crush their goals together. Mm-hmm. Specifically, we partner with content creators to transform their audience into these vibrant communities that cheer each other on, support each other. The mechanics in the platform look like group chat where people are doing Q&A, sharing their experiences, getting advice. And then there's also this idea of accepting and tackling challenges together, in which people submit photos and videos of them doing the activity. So for example, we partner with Lavender, who's a podcast I think you listened to last time. Mm-hmm. She's leading a 40-day Liberation Kriya challenge right now, which is a meditation challenge. And then like Rowena Tai, who's another creator on our platform, she has 520,000 YouTube subscribers. She's doing a mindfulness challenge with digital worksheets. Mm. So it's just everyone coming together, synchronously doing an activity, getting feedback, as well as becoming better friends in the community because of that. So that's kind of what Vibely is.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
awesome. I love how your face just lit up when we asked about Vibely. When you were talking about Vibely, that just goes to show how much passion you have for the company.
Yeah, I really like the tagline too. Built by women, not gamer dudes.
I love
My French writer really liked that line.
How did you
I mean,
the name Vibely?
Yeah.
oh, good question. So originally we were thinking about good vibes. That was really a core tenet of what these communities should encompass. So, through iterations of different names, we picked a couple, tested it amongst users on like Mechanical Turk, and then saw there was a more positive reception towards this name. It gave people the feeling of like fun and positivity. And so that's what we landed on.
I love that. Yeah.
Love it.
That's a great name, by the way.
Yes.
Well, good. I'm glad. Sometimes I worry because I'm like, maybe it has some connotations. Once in a while, people say, sounds potentially scandalous. So, but yeah, I'm glad that we do not have mostly that impression.
Awesome. So now that we know what Vibely is, like Brian said, talk about that experience just jumping from your tech job to being a CEO and co-founder.
That's a huge transition that all of us are always curious about, but some of us are not willing to make that jump. So we want to hear about that experience.
I want to know if you were like already thinking about starting a company while you were at Asana, and what was the time frame between Asana to starting Vibely?
Yeah. So when I was working at Asana, I think I always had this hustle in me to want to create a company and start something and make an impact. So that I didn't know when the right time was, because I wanted it to be something that I actually cared about, because it's such a long journey. You have to select something that actually makes like something you can continue getting energy from. And then I also wanted experience, because I figured the more that I had an understanding of product development growth, especially if this was kind of like where I was brewing, that I would be able to execute and really do it in an efficient way, instead of having to sometimes learn along the way. It can be slower. So I think about a year into Asana, I started really thinking about like how tech is in a place where I don't like. So the A/B testing framework that you see in a lot of these tech companies, forces this kind of like addictive screen time experience where we get more and more socially empty and lonely as we use it. And I wanted to create a like real empowering sort of tech where it helps you be more inspired, happier, like you have more meaningful, enriching experiences because of the tech itself. So when I quit Asana, I already had, this mission core to me in mind. And then after, testing around some concepts, we started bringing like online Facebook groups offline as a way to make this happen. So we thought face-to-face would be an amazing way to give people that support system. And then ultimately, we found that a lot of these influencers or personalities would be the ones leading these super engaging communities, just like you guys for Asian Hustle Network. So then we wanted to really help them curate their community in a way that rewarded them, that gave a lot of intimacy towards the community, and then continue to service the mission.
I love that. I love how community focused you are with your company, with Vibely too. Out of curiosity, like, were you trying to solve a personal issue that you kind of dealt with throughout your content creation career early on?
That's a good question.
How you found your passion for this project?
Yeah, so the content creator experience I had in 2011 definitely fed into this. Right? So my channel is actually for my dog, embarrassing. But she was a Klikai, which was a newer breed at the time. It's known as a mini husky. But a lot of people would watch and look to me as the like subject matter expert. And so they would always ask the same questions. It was like, how big is your dog going to get? What size is she? How do I treat this separation anxiety? What color of a Klikai should I get? And so it was getting to the point where it was not just comments, but I had so many inbox messages around the same kind of questions. So it just showed me how unscalable it can be to be the primary point person and the only relationship that the viewers have. And so there's just so much more potential when the creator can actually be a real community leader that brings and rallies people together, similar to like the Pope to the Catholic Church or a president to a school, where it's a real intimate community led by someone.
Wow. That's
I
awesome
love
to hear.
that. Yeah. I love how you're able to take what you've experienced and learned through your content creation days and really build out Vibely to what it is today. When you were just starting Vibely, what was your marketing strategy like, and how heavily did you rely on, just word of mouth?
Good question. So it was very experimental at first. So my background is growth, right? So I'd like to validate a lot of the ideas before going down a path. What was the common theme was just the mission that we had around empowering positive and meaningful experiences. But we tested with a lot of different concepts at first. It was like our first wedge. It was like uniting solo travelers. It was like, helping Facebook groups. Then it was like the influencers powering the communities. And so when I had spoken to Lavendera last year, that was when we were already on the path of influencers creating these meaningful communities under their brand. And so, things have changed even since then, because it's always an evolving journey. So COVID wiped out all the offline activities that these influencers could do with their communities. And so we really reestablished and focused on creating that intimacy online through the challenges, through the synchronous activities, and saw that as we've basically had 14x growth since the pandemic as a result. So kind of always have to be keeping your eyes open and shifting and learning and executing and getting back up if things push you down.
I like that a lot. That's so, I think you kind of like brush over so quickly, but there's so much to unpack, It's like, those are great signs of a strong entrepreneur, especially in a fast changing environment like Vibely or any startup that you're a part of. You always have to keep an eye out for trends, opportunities, and what's going on in the world. That's how you stay ahead of the curve and continue building a vibrant culture. But my next question is, with the environment constantly changing, how do you focus your company on one thing at a time? Because there's so many things that comes your way. There's so many ways to pivot, right? You have your team, you have your advisors. They all say different things. How do you, as Teri, the CEO, decide what to focus on?
Yeah, so this is a hard skill, because you have so many different stakeholders. You have your investors, you have your team, you have for us, we have our creators, we also have the members. And so as the person who's like corralling all this, you have to zoom out constantly, take a look at, all the different priorities. Oftentimes I'll analyze like impact over cost. That helps me decide, which opportunities are worth pursuing versus not. But sometimes it's just gut too, where your instincts and your the feedback that you're getting from people has to be part of that like decision-making process. So it's, not perfect, of course, there's no science to it. But you can often validate before you act. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but the entire growth process of at least a tech company, you do need to be very experimental. You need to try things. Oftentimes I will try to bring up a landing page or bring up a Facebook ad to kind of validate or invalidate my assumptions before going deeper down a path and spending engineering resources on something. So that helps to mitigate the risk.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear about your strategic thinking and the way you make decisions. I think that's very inspirational for a lot of us to kind of listen to. And I kind of want to focus on you as a female founder too. Like, what kind of struggles have you faced, especially in a very male-dominated industry like tech and in VC?
Yeah, and there's, statistics everywhere that shows a very little percentage of, venture capital funding goes to women-led companies. And I know you also lead Vibely with another female entrepreneur as well. So would love to know any challenges that you went through.
Yeah, and on top of that, during the pandemic, any kind of progress you made for female funding collapsed to like 2017 levels. So definitely always a struggle for the female aspect of it. But for me personally, I think I started at a time where at least the industry was already aware of the biases against females. So I didn't encounter as much like sexual harassment or discrimination. However, there's so many implicit biases that we as humans just don't even know we have. So when it comes to things like fundraising, there were times when I, would encounter people who would take me less seriously. Who knows why? Maybe I was female. Maybe it's because I'm Asian, or maybe I just don't present myself that well. Who knows? But either way, having that extra unknown about you makes it just like a tad bit harder. But that doesn't mean you can't overcome it, right? So like we had our pre-seed round early on. We had awesome backers like Steve Chen, the co-founder of YouTube, Scott Heckman, the co-founder of Meetup, Evan Tana, the advisor to Patreon. And so there were early believers in what we were doing, even before the concept of the creator economy got really hot. And so that was, just finding the people who really believe in you and understand where your business is going, and the general industry really propels you past any kind of challenges. And so we you mentioned this, but we just closed a oversubscribed seed round as well. And it was over 2 million. So that's something that
congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. And we have the world's best investors behind us. So I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities that we have today. But it did take a lot of hard work and overcoming many challenges that were thrown at us.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I read about the seed financing in TechCrunch, so congratulations on that. I'd love to know what that process was like while you were fundraising as a first-time founder.
The hustle involved. I don't think that a lot of us can understand what you went through to hustle for that type of capital,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think fundraising as a concept, it's like this game where I think it's a lot less about merit than you would expect, because there's a lot of optics that feed into it. Everyone wants to invest in what everyone else wants to invest in. And so you really have to, no matter how you're feeling about it, you really have to put on a strong face, put on your business suit. I mean, not literally, but, mentally, and really portray yourself in the best possible light. That is unfortunately how the fundraising, at least in San Francisco, it works. But the entire journey itself of fundraising was very exciting at the same time, because you meet so many people who are, either well-known in their industry or are good growth minds or consumer minds. And for us, it gave us all this free feedback on the strategies that we had. And as long as you know who to listen to and who to not, you can kind of take that all in and encompass a better strategy over time. So yeah, I'm great. I think it was definitely stressful in the sense that it's never, nothing like that is ever that easy, but it is really awesome too, because, now we have even better investors than I could have asked for.
You did it, Teri. Well, you did the first part, but this is just the beginning of something even greater, So we're always cheering you on along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I kind of want to focus on, on you, on how do you take care of yourself? Because, there's a lot of stress that goes into running a company. You're probably waking up thinking about this 24/7, right? When is Teri time? When do you wind down and okay, I'm not going to answer any emails? Because as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to oh, I can handle that. It's 5 minutes, and 5 minutes eats into another email. You go down a deep rabbit hole. So how do you set boundaries for yourself as an entrepreneur? Yeah.
And do you follow any routines or habits, healthy habits that you picked up on?
I'm going to be honest with you. I work a lot. So I'm not sure I have a good sense of boundaries. I think even in an early stage of a company, you kind of have to throw yourself in it. However, recognize that it's not just about time spent, it's also about your own productivity. But in theory, if you're productive and you spend a lot of time, the more you can accomplish for a company. So for me, I have my rituals that I've found over time that have worked, which I can get into. but I'm still figuring out what is the right line. Because unfortunately, if you don't work on the company, like no one else is going to really be as passionate as the founders. And so you have to be always thinking about it. So getting into more like the self-care zone of what I do. Well, I don't know if anyone should learn from me, particularly for self-care, but I do tend to have these sources of energy that I can always reset back to. So sometimes that's a significant other, that's my best friend, Vivian, or that's, a show or a podcast that might make me feel inspired. So sometimes, when I'm feeling down, I'll watch something as, dramatic and sensational as Shark Tank, because that gives me like this view back to appreciate the opportunity that's in front of me. Sometimes it's a playlist. So if it's, I have this music that reminds me of when I was a child and when life was simpler, I'll listen to that. So still what I try to do, like the R&B songs, when I was in high school, that kind of thing. So that source of energy will often bring me up. And then I have things that I know bring me down that I try to cut out. This requires a lot of like self-awareness, but if there's a particular issue or systemic problem with like process or something like that, like solving it and actually taking action on it faster helps me feel better. So I try to redirect any kind of like negative energy towards action. And then that has helped me overcome a lot of the hard shit.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm also very much the same way. It's like anytime negative stuff, I'm just going to do more work. It just makes me feel better.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, the only thing you have to be careful of is sometimes doing more work, be like action, not progress, So just you have to be aware that, you always want to be working on something meaningful at least.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that you're being honest with yourself, saying that you do work a lot, but at the same time, it seems like you've really come to find out like what keeps you grounded, and that takes a lot of courage.
We're still learning boundaries ourselves. Like we see something, like, what, let's do it. It's part of the Asian hustle, right? But then we're starting realizing more and more how important it is to like take care of yourself first, because if you take care of your mental health, everything will fall into place.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm lucky to work with creators who like practice wellness and self-care, like Eileen Shu and Rowena, because like they teach me a lot of times by watching their videos and they're seeing their community of like, what are the healthy things to do? Like journal, reading, like exercise. I'm just trying to force myself to do all those things more and more. So it's nice to surround yourself with that like positivity as well.
The community-based effort. I like that a lot.
Yes, very vitally.
So we listened to your podcast with Lavender, and you did mention a little bit about rejection therapy. Yeah. And we also interviewed Jia Zhang recently
rejection therapy.
On rejection therapy. So I would love to know, like, what type of situations do you set up to expose yourself to rejection, and what have you learned from it?
And what was your mentality before getting rejected? Getting rejected sucks. Yes. It's gonna happen, but you just had to brush it off, right?
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like rejection to me anymore. I will literally, if I have something I want, I'll just send out an email. You don't hear back. I don't even remember because I send so many. I think it's honestly just practice where it becomes a muscle and you just exercise it, and then it's your second nature, where you don't even feel anything when you heavy lift anymore. Yeah. But I don't think I ever went out to like a pizza restaurant and like, oh, will you give me free pizza? Early on in high school, I did have jobs where you'd actually go up to people and just ask them to take surveys or do something.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah. So I think that one of them I'm thinking of is, it used to be a movie survey company where they'd want random people in the theater to come to this kiosk and then put in their opinions about a trailer that's upcoming. Yeah. And so it was a lot of me just approaching strangers and being like, hello, will you please come and fill out this survey? And that in itself, probably pushed me to learn that, if someone's like, no, I don't have time, not to take it personally. just to keep going, and that it is a numbers game at the end of the day.
Yeah. I really like that mentality too, because that is very much a part of the hustle. You'll probably encounter a buttload of no's.
Yeah.
Just because they say no, it doesn't mean your idea is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. You really can't get anything done if you're afraid of rejection. Like, it's just part of it. It's not even, you should maybe even reframe it. It's not even rejection. It's just moving. You just got to move through the brushery to be able to get to where you need to go.
Definitely. I really like your growth mindset. It really shines through the entire podcast, how you think about certain things. And, the entrepreneurship path is really difficult, and there's a lot of highs and lows, I know you mentioned that when you're feeling low, you push that into action. So can you kind of highlight some of the times where you felt the high, and how do you continue staying motivated when you're still feeling really good?
That's a good question. So the highs, when I've had really amazing moments, I do have to consciously grab onto that for longer and remember over and over again that that's a high moment, because it's so easy to get back into the whole swirl of bad and not as good, and maybe good but not good enough. And so I think the way to do that is potentially like writing things down so that you truly internalize it. I do once in a while put things on a sticky note and like put it on my mirror or my computer, just to like remind me that something good is happening. But yeah, I think it's a kind of natural thing of entrepreneurs to focus on what else needs to be done. What else do is not ideal, so that we can get to the next place or the next milestone. So yeah, it's just a constant reversion back to your positive placements or what you've done, to remind yourself to be gracious, because it's a hedonic treadmill at the end of the day, and you'll never be happy if you don't stop and realize that what's around you is already, there's so much opportunity, so much privilege, so much that we should be grateful for.
I like that a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Teri, how do you see yourself, how have you grown personally since starting this company? I'm sure you've went through so much since starting Vibely.
I know. You can tell your tone of voice, and for you guys are see right now, we're doing a video podcast. So we see Teri, we see like the grit and grind that she has as she talks, and she's so passionate about what she does.
And I think like Brian and Teri have kind of met each other before, right?
That makes it sound so creepy.
Not creepy.
I'm just kidding. I know Teri.
You two went to USC.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you've grown so much, throughout the years, but we'd love to know how you personally see yourself have grown throughout the years as well.
So I used to have really bad imposter syndrome, and I actually forgot I had that until recently. I was talking to some of our teammates, and they were, communicating that they had some thoughts in this arena. And I realized, doing Vibely and actually taking action on my own accord solved a lot of the imposter syndrome that I had when I was working at a company. And I think it goes back to if you feel like you have personally accomplished something where you feel proud, where you're like, I made it happen, I know that I was a big force in it. I think you tend to then stop focusing on others' impression of your performance, and you start to have full, confidence and acceptance of what you've done, and no one can really take that away from you. So I've also, read books a long time ago about imposter syndrome, and maybe that helped to hear all the different examples. Even one of our backers, who's a co-founder of Asana, very successful guy who was employee number 20 at Facebook. He's had imposter syndrome growing up as well. So it's I think everyone has it. You have to get to a point where you are so, you've accomplished something that you're proud of, and you're just comfortable and accepting of your own skills and weaknesses, that you stop thinking so much about this haze that's surrounding you. So that's the biggest difference, I think. But maybe that's just top of mind because of my conversation recently with the team.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the subject of imposter syndrome will always be there, but except you find tools and ways and community in order to overcome that. It doesn't matter where you are in life. You're gonna face a situation where you look at yourself and be like, whoa, what am I doing? Why is everyone asking for advice here? You know?
Sometimes I have to stop and realize that a lot of people are now looking to me for advice and that I can teach them something. It's actually quite different than where I was before. Yeah, and there's also different tricks for imposter syndrome where, like, I think there's a book where it talks about your body language and how that can affect your mentality. So if you stand up straight and you put your arms out wide, like, it'll actually make you feel more confident while you're talking, which I totally believe in. But I do think there needs to be some like substance where you feel like you actually have done something and they can really, be a part of who you are.
Yeah, I really like that. Summarize, like, to overcome imposter syndrome is by
taking action.
I love it.
Yes, absolutely. So what I really love about Vibely is that it really reminds me of Asian Hustle Network, just like all about community building. And I've read everywhere that says, Vibely is like a judgment-free zone. Mm-hmm. How do you ensure that, Vibely maintains that judgment-free zone?
How do you maintain that culture?
Yeah, that culture.
Culture is like one of the hot keywords that gets thrown around a lot. Mm-hmm. It's all about culture.
Yeah.
But like no one dives deep into what culture is and how you build culture.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. What you've accomplished with AHN is actually it gives me some inspiration on our own when we're looking at like the Vibely communities. Yeah. Most of the communities we attract are these like positive mission-based communities where they're truly trying to help people grow. And so that tends to attract a demographic that of like kind and supportive people that are on our platform. Mm-hmm. We're very thankful for. Long term, as we scale, we'll continue to be this kindness, but we do have automated tools that check for certain negative actions. Judgment is a hard one. I don't know if we are going to be ever judgment free.
That is really difficult.
It is difficult.
I guess it's a brother zone.
Yeah, I think more so we want to be a troll free, drama free zone. And the way we accomplish that is through something we branded as a vibe check. So that's our commitment to positivity, where, if you are bullying, harassing, you are soliciting, there's a very low bar in which you will just get kicked out of the platform entirely, if not just removed from the group. Mm-hmm. But we do leave it up to the communities. They have ambassadors who manage their members and conversation. And then if it's ever reported up to us globally, we will actually take action on it instead of waiting around, potentially like Parler or one of those other, like maybe Twitter, a little bit more on the negative side of moderation.
I love that. I love how you're super transparent about that. And, especially in a time like this where we just like need more love within communities and everyone, it's really important.
It's a really subject.
It shocks me that we do not already have a place where you can truly go for a source of kindness and inspiration.
Yeah.
Closest today is maybe TikTok, maybe Facebook groups. AHN definitely is, but you guys are diamond in the rough. Like, it's so hard to find those kind of engaging, positive, supportive places. And so ultimately our platform will be the home for all these communities, whether that's creator communities, Facebook groups like AHN, or, religions or brands or political parties. Like, everyone needs a home, and we were really creating that space where there's a true affiliation and identity associated with who's around you.
I love that. So this is the early 2021. What are your goals for the rest of the year, and what are your goals for Vibely for the rest of the year?
My personal goals tend to conflate with Vibely a lot. I want to exercise more. Even this podcast reminds me that I was supposed to exercise Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and I fell out of that recently.
Still got it. Still time.
My personal goals. And then Vibely, we have already had over 600 communities last year in 2020. We also had over 400,000 messages sent, as well as 37,000 completed challenges. So people are really responding well to it. And we just want to continue growing and scaling and making it rewarding for both content creators and for the community to truly feel like this is a place they can depend on, a real support system that they'll never feel alone again.
I love that.
Love it. Amazing. So, Teri, we have one last question for you.
Okay.
That is, what one advice can you give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Aspiring female entrepreneur. You want to focus on that.
There's so much.
Only one.
You can name two.
Okay, two. Teri gets two.
Two? Okay. The first one is should I go for corny or should I go for like
one corny one?
I don't really know. Maybe one more like philosophy one and one more tactical one. Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
the first one is to believe in yourself and continue to persist and keep going. I think that's the hardest trait to find in people. And if you have that, where you can get yourself off the ground every time you get beat down, you are going to be one of the most successful people out there, because that is literally the trait that takes you from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Nothing else like smarts or network and all that can compensate for just your ability to be like resilient. So there's a lot of mental stamina in there. I just want to encourage people to have, because that's truly how we got to where we were today. Mm-hmm. Maybe the second one that's a lot more tactical is that you should really, if you have any way to experiment and like measure and create a success criteria around validating your ideas prior, that will help to make sure that you're on the right path, because everyone has ideas, right? But to know which ones to pursue, you can really just focus your time and energy on the ones that are actually going to get you to the company and you to a good place. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that you just learn as more in like the product sphere, but it's true for anything. For example, even a CPG product, you might want to just test that with 100, maybe 500 people before you have a final concept, and that just mitigates a lot of the risk that people won't like it as much, and that you just sunk a bunch of money.
I love that. I love the strategic thinking side of you a lot.
Yes.
And I know I mentioned that a lot in this podcast already, but I do appreciate that.
Really good. Thank you, Teri. And how can our listeners find out more about you and Vibely online?
So I have a Twitter account now. I actually used to never tweet, but I'm starting to. It's Teri Yu at Twitter. And then I'm on Instagram. I am Teriyaki Chicken, which I'm still proud of, because I got that name when I was like in, I want to say early college.
So cool.
And yeah, if you're interested in Vibely itself, the site is vibely.io. So our goal there is to just help as many community leaders lead more intimate and meaningful communities. So happy to help anyone who needs.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Teri. It was amazing hearing about your story.
Thank you, Teri. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. It was so fun to chat with you guys.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.